It's Christmas! It's Christmas! What are you doing in here? Get off me! It's Christmas! Come on! Let's go! Run! Oh, God. It's Christmas morning. That can wait for tomorrow. Presents! Presents, presents, presents! Presents, presents, presents! Presents, presents, presents! Oh, God, my knees! Presents! All right, it's another fine day in the neighborhood or whatever. Hey, buddy! Hi! Hey, hugs! Hugs! Oh, you're just gonna sit on my lap. Okay, that's fine. Let's open some presents for Daddy. Ooh, this looks like a present for Daddy. Should we open it? Okay. Ooh, what's that? Can you say night has 1,000 desires?
No, it's this. Here go. For Mommy.
Oh, no.
No, they're
buddy,
all for Dad,
They're all for me.
bud.
They're all for me. They're all for me. They're all for me. Thank you.
Let me open it at you.
Okay, you can open it.
You take it. Okay.
Do it towards camera.
There you.
It's blind target.
No, are you?
Okay, next up. Oh, did you wrap this one, buddy?
Let me open it. You take it. That's how I do.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Why, yeah.
No, don't go to the light. This is all a real thing that's happening right now. What do we got? Oh, it's Count Dracula. Starring Christopher Lee. Oh, yeah, that's good. Thank you, bud. No. It's Killer Barbies.
Yeah.
Can you say Killer Barbies?
No, what? They don't know what you.
No, that's it. That's it. That's the bit. That's the whole bit. That's the whole bit. Well, let's change into something more comfortable and talk about all these movies.
When the snow falls at Christmas, it brings some kind of magic atmosphere.
Hello all. It's Christmas again, and that means it's been one whole year since my A Very Franco Christmas video, in which I pulled a hard H on Bahia Blanca, and somehow wasn't cancelled by the entire peoples of Spain. For this, I am forever grateful to the dark powers of my lord, Satan. Anywho, welcome to the stack.
We're going to visit Miss Lucy Weston Raspberry. Children, the night, what music they make.
One of the many fascinating takeaways from a deep foray into the Francoverse is how often the best Franco has the least budget. This does, of course, falter a bit as you get into his late 90s and early aughts output, but generally speaking, if it's shot on film, Franco is best on a borderline non-existent budget. Films like Faceless are the exception that prove the rule. Meanwhile, his fairly budgeted, albeit still low, as was predominantly the case, Fu Manchu films are more on the slog side of things.
Take him to the laboratory.
This is by no means a scientific conclusion. I mean, we've all seen Oasis of the Zombies. But still, when he was busy pushing out hastily scraped together projects for like Golden Films International in the early 80s, for me that was the good shit. Mo money, mo time? Nah, give me that bargain basement sleaze, please.
I'm a human being.
I was always a little trepidatious when it came to Franco's 1970 Bram Stoker adaptation of Count Dracula, starring Christopher Lee, as well as Franco's first proper muse, Soledad Miranda. After all, this was a reasonably budgeted film, still low compared to your average mainstream production, of course, but backed by producer Harry Alan Towers, and, you know, all the money that comes with promoting your film as the first accurate adaptation of Dracula.
Just as I feared.
Surely this would be as dry as the Fu Manchu films that Jess Franco directed and Harry Alan Towers also produced.
The world shall hear from me again.
Well, as it turns out, and special thanks to Stephen Thrower for his massive tomes of Franco knowledge, BT dubs, Count Dracula is an extra special strange case of Franco financing. Basically, Towers allocated most of the budget to make the film production seem far more grand to Christopher Lee while filming his scenes as the Count. After Lee was wrapped, the rest of the film was produced effectively with scraps, meaning, technically, this is a pretty standard Franco production for about 2/3 of the runtime. A fucking years. So first of all, Count Dracula is gothic as fuck. I'm usually more of a fan when Franco is utilizing modern architecture of the 1970s, but damn if he doesn't make the most of his locations here. There's a strong sense of impending doom and ancient wonder within the confines of both the legit castle and the sets. Lucy's bedroom, for example, brings to mind something you might have seen in Nosferatu. The shot composition is also quite nice.
Just as you required.
Nothing groundbreaking, but pleasing to the eye uses of symmetry and deep images, fully utilizing fore, mid, and background. I recognize that this is nothing revolutionary, but it's the little things that can make the difference. I just really enjoyed looking at this thing, which is usually the takeaway from the best Franco joints.
War mir körperlich verfallen und konnte sich nicht lösen. Ihm verdanke ich.
Oh, and on the acting front, we have Herbert Lom, who has a sort of natural intensity that serves his Van Helsing well, but I can't deny that he was a bit wrong for the role. You can tell he was Franco's third choice after Vincent Price, and then Dennis Price were unavailable, but still, at the very least, it's Herbert fucking Lom. Dude rocks. If you want to see him really just nail a Franco role, check out his sleazy turn in 99 Women. Great stuff. Anywho, Lom comes across as a dominant presence, so it works. Quick spoiler, Lom is the subject of one of the two most bewildering shots in this film, wherein he just stares right down the barrel of the lens and, dies, I guess?
Slight stroke. But although my legs are a little uncertain, I trust my intellect is not a goner.
Oh. I'm assuming this was written in when the production realized they couldn't afford to send Lom to the castle location in the third act. Oh, and you wanted to know the other bewildering shot. This out-of-focus owl. All the other stuffed animals start coming to life right after this, but my stoned brain was shook in the moment. The scene is bonkers, clearly dictated by a lack of money and presumably a hastily approved whim on Franco's part. A lot of critics call it out as a serious flaw, and well, sure it is part of a strong case against this as a strict adaptation. I personally found our heroes facing off against a taxidermy doom squad pretty enjoyable. Of course, there's also Klaus Kinski as Renfield, who, much like his turn in Venus in Furs, isn't quite as off-the-wall bananas as you might be expecting, or hoping for that matter. Great brooding face, as we caveman brow types are known for, but that's about it. Dude basically has one line here, so a bit of a letdown if you were expecting him to be as chaotic as his reputation. I have a pet theory that this and his other more low-key roles in the Franco oeuvre are down to Franco's chill attitude, meaning less conflict on set and more controlled performances on film. I still have yet to see a few, though, so I might be full of shit. I just know that I distinctly remember Franco saying that Kinski wasn't that tough to work with. Werner Herzog disagrees.
Alle diese Hysterie, die der Kinski da mit sich gebracht hatte und ins Spiel gebracht hatte, immer produktiv gemacht worden ist.
Before I continue, I'm gonna say that one big flaw is that while the film as a whole isn't as dry as I had worried it would be, most of the performances, primarily those from our team of heroes, are a bit, well, chilly.
You know so much about the black arts. Suppose you too are Dracula's servant.
I have never met the Count. And yet I feel I know him better than my own soul.
There's not a lot going on emotionally in this film, and that is unfortunate, although from a certain perspective, that lack of warmth or energy could be mistaken for a more meditative approach. I'm pretty sure it's just them whiffing a bit, but you could make the argument.
Professor, you must do something. You can't let her die through ignorance.
Mina and Lucy, meanwhile, are played by Maria Ram and Soledad Miranda, respectively. Christopher Lee and Herbert Lom were apparently the only actors to speak their own English in this flick, so it's hard to really, dig into the ladies' performances. But that said, Ram and Miranda are their own usual great selves, and, well, super banging. Miranda specifically has a natural grace and beauty that is well tread ground by now. Once she starts becoming more and more vampiric, she becomes a creepy hottie of dramatic proportions, like, feed on me, mommy. Good God. It's frankly bonkers that she did all of her leading role work with Franco in the span of essentially a year. This was shot at the tail end of 1969, and it remains a huge tragedy that she died so young. Here she is a bit underused, and as Thrower states in his review, she could have been removed entirely, but thank goodness she wasn't, if only for this one great shot.
Come here.
And finally, the other most notable casting choice, Christopher fucking Lee.
I am Dracula. Enter freely and of your own will.
Franco and Lee worked multiple times together and by all accounts had a pretty good rapport.
Passions aren't naught but the means nature employs to bring man to the end she prescribes for him.
And in Count Dracula, both make a strong attempt at finally bringing together a proper book-accurate version of the character. While the finished film is definitely not that, the character himself is far more of the Bram Stoker mold. This comes right down to Drax starting off as an old man and becoming younger as the film progresses, a story element that, frankly, I've always thought was baffling to not appear in more Dracula movies. It's a major part of the character and just ignored in nearly every adaptation. Lee as a whole doesn't embody this as much as I would like, primarily because he's just a bit too composed and regal once he gets younger. I feel like not a whole lot changes, although that could be down to my one viewing. There is this line that's really fucking just, oh my god, like all-timer for Lee.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make.
God damn. There is a ferocity that peeks out here and there, but as is often the case with Lee, I found him to be a little too restrained at times, a little too proper British. Still, you can't beat that domineering physique and haunting gaze. And of course, Lee is one of the screen Draculas, so seeing him in something accurate-ish to the source is quite a sight. Emphasis on the ish. It's too bad that Dracula's inevitable demise is weak as shit. Another spoiler, I guess. Move like 15 seconds ahead. But old Drac is just burned and then thrown off a ledge while in his casket. And that's it. It's a very shrug-inducing end of him and the film itself. There are some cool effects while he's burning. Like, it does have a certain cheese factor to it, but, it's Christopher Lee's Dracula. Book accurate. In the book, it's fucking rad as shit. Because he gets his fucking throat slit and then stabbed in the heart. Like, it's fucking... It's lit AF, fam, and this is not lit. I mean, it is lit because they light him up, but you get it. Unfortunately, other negatives do abound. While I enjoyed myself, this is a movie weighed down by off-putting and head-scratching decisions. For example, why does Count Dracula have a mirror in his castle? Weird flex, dude. I'll say it though. Jess Franco's adaptation of Dracula is better than the Universal version. It's far from the best overall. That title belongs to the Francis Ford Coppola version, BT dubs. But I found it really enjoyable. Sure, it's the millionth version of the same old story, so it's a bit tiring to go through it yet again, but it's got faithful intentions that, while flawed, are admirable, and I feel like if there wasn't a money problem, you know, it would have been closer.
I love you, Broseph Goebbels.
You know, it's just nice to get Quincy Morris for the first time in cinema. True fact, first time Quincy Morris ever in a Dracula movie. Here played by proud Oregonian Jack Taylor. America.
Your eyes are playing tricks.
Yeah, fuck, he's goddamn British in this one. Damn it, Franco! I'm trying to help you here, and you pull a fast one on me.
I'm afraid you're not allowed in this part of the house.
Whatever. It's a beautifully shot film, hampered but never defeated by its budget, with some quintessentially Eurotrash casting, a solid score from Bruno Nicolai, and you know what? The best Christopher Lee Dracula. Haters be damned, Jess Franco's Count Dracula is a winner, and one he'd easily top the same year with Vampyros Lesbos, which we're not going to talk about right now. Pretty sure I talked about that one before. Have I talked about Vampyros Lesbos? I'm talking to no one. Night Has 1,000 Desires. As previously noted, the early 80s were a very productive time for Uncle Jess, thanks in no small part to Golden Films International, who basically just threw money at Franco to keep pumping out low-budget skin flicks. In 1982, he shot 12 movies, while in 1983, he shot 11, and one of them was Night Has 1,000 Desires. As with any Franco plot, there's not a whole lot to delve into with this one. Basically, you have Lina Romay as the Great Irina, very common name in Franco land, by the way, who is part of a show wherein she uses her psychic abilities while her lover/partner Fabian, or whatever the fuck, played by Daniel Katz, goes around the room and takes a gander at various objects. During a show, a man gives Fabian a note, which Irina reads.
Te quedan pocas horas de vida.
Big yikes! Turns out there's more going on behind the scenes, and Fabian is secretly working with this broad Lorna, also a very common name, to control Irina into killing off their enemies, which Irina promptly does. Tale as old as time. And I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending to this one is one of the most out of left field, last minute changes I've ever seen. Really has to be seen to be believed. It's as if Franco had his perfect downer ending, and then at the last minute remember that there was some dictate that it needed a more mainstream finale or something. It feels like the kind of change that would happen in General Franco, Spain, basically. But instead it's 1983, so I don't know what the fuck the problem is. Anyway, this structure of sending a woman to commit acts of murder was nothing new to Franco, and you may even recall that this is basically the same plot as Shining Sex, except there Lina Romay is an exotic dancer, and the ones bossing her around through psychic control are interdimensional aliens, or something. It's a great stock plot, one that, as I say all this, I want to go rip off immediately. 1,000 Desires is also just full of great little moments. There's our skinny king over here reading the Necronomicon in paperback, natch, and this scene, which I have dubbed the scariest blowjob of all time. Legit, this scene has a jump scare that just, And first time I watched it, I was positively freaked. Freaked, I say.
Soy real. Relájate. Solo soy un sueño.
Another scene that I just loved and ranks as one of my all-timers amongst Franco's filmography is this sequence in which Lina infiltrates a gathering of, swingers smoking weed, I guess? These two ladies are with our mysterious manly man at the initial performance, so I don't know, maybe they're just a polycule. Or hey, it's Europe, maybe they're siblings, I don't know, whatever. Either which way. The scene is 15 straight minutes, and really nothing happens except for pure Franco vibes. I mean, yes, it ends with some deathy death murder goodness, but really it's just Lina playing music out of belly buttons and people being stoned and fucking. It's hard to express why this scene hits so hard, but the way Franco shoots it is like being placed in a dream. It's a one-scene explanation of why I love this film and many other Franco films. Here, he perfected the minimalism that allowed him to pump out so many films in such a short period of time.
Dígale que ha llamado Irina, que es muy urgente.
Outside of a knife and a few quick shots of blood, there's really not much here as far as props or effects. Instead, we rely on Franco and his endless zooms and flesh etched into film. Anyway, why try to put it into words from my dumb brain when Stephen Thrower has already done so? To quote the chief educator of Franco studies himself from the holy text, Franco fashioned something weird and amazing. The story could be told in a quarter of the time, but then the same could be said of a melody. You can always play a tune faster, but while harmonic relationships would remain the same, you'd lose the mood. And it is mood, more than anything else, that Franco cares about. For me, Night Has a Thousand Desires is pretty much peak Franco. It's exactly what I want. Shameless, albeit goofy, nudity-filled eroticism, exotic locations, a minimalist plot, excellent shot composition, most of the time, a meditative pace, and total mastery of his own unique mood. Not to mention, motherfucker's chaotic as hell. And all that in an hour and a half. Fucking brilliant stuff. Also, Lena Remey's tits in this? So, Killer Barbys. 1996's tale of a band run afoul of a vampire-esque star of the silver screen was the final film from Franco that was given anything close to a proper budget. It's an interesting note to go out on, 3 years after his previous unfinished film, Jungle of Fear, and 6 years after his last completed film, 1990's Downtown Heat.
Early Maçon. Very nice.
It should be noted, in that interim, he did help to complete Orson Welles' Don Quixote, which no one really gave a fuck about, but still. But how had Franco wound up doing a film about a real-life band, the Killer Barbys? Long story short, he was introduced to them by an indie music mogul by the name of Carlos Galan, aka Carlos Subterfuge, aka this guy. Wonder why you cast yourself in that role, Carlos. I wonder. Jess listened to their music, had a spare script laying around, and being Jess fucking Franco, he rewrote it to include the two leads of the band alongside a few murder bait characters. While on the villainy side, we get Santiago Segura from Day of the Beast, spaghetti western stalwart Aldo Sambrell, and Buried Alive's Mom of the Year, Mariangela Giordano. So a pretty stacked cast all said and done, even if it's, not quite as strong a lineup as, say, Faceless or Count Dracula. For 1996, solid shit. A little shot Christopher Mitchum isn't in there, but whatever. Also, Charlie Chaplin's grandson is in this. So, cool. Killer Barbys is, like most Franco flicks, not a very tall order on the plot front. The Killer Barbys are on tour, and their car breaks down near the home of a certain countess with a big-time love of literal bloodbaths. Hilarity ensues. Wow, maybe I should clarify that a bit. Hilarity ensues, if this kind of thing is your bag. And even then, I've seen plenty of folks fully on board the Franco bandwagon not take kindly to it. Hell, in Flowers of Perversion, Stephen Thrower himself calls Killer Barbys a festering embarrassment. Big yikes. But it's easy to see how that reaction could evolve. After all, our characters are mostly unlikable or poorly acted, all of them doing their best to embody 90s grunge, going up against the antiquity of what Franco used to represent. This generational conflict, very much text in the film itself, doesn't really feel like what we've come to expect. The seemingly eternal sex scenes in the van, set to the film's looping, let's call it a theme song, bears no eroticism and feels more in line with an American take on fucking and horror cinema. It's maybe parodying the slasher films of the previous decade, but of course Franco had already dabbled there pretty strongly in 1981's Bloody Moon. We do get some delightful gothic atmosphere, as well as a typically Franco location that's maybe not quite as impressive as many previous castles and hotels, but still strong. And there's way more blood and gore than usual, for those of you who wanted more of that in the Uncle Jess canon. It just all looks super fake, as is the Franco way. It kind of feels like an Italian horror film that he's taken aim at too. It feels like a mix. It almost feels like he's parodying both American slashers and Italian horror films of like the 1980s and early 90s. I don't know, man. It should be noted that in his review, Stephen Thrower harps on about Killer Barbys, despite being shot on Super 16, having the look of video due to aggressive post-production. While there's certainly some less than appealing shots, I'm not sure the 2017 Redemption Blu-ray, which I have here, represents what he saw when writing his tome. In fact, it even says newly restored from a 4K scan of the original film elements, meaning it might not show the director's intent, but does better represent its filmic origins. Considering the Shriek Show DVD is the only listed release in the book, I'd be very curious to know Thrower's thoughts on this version. As is, there's plenty of strong composition here. It's definitely not as visually refined as, say, Night Has a Thousand Desires, but I would never fault a film for not reaching that level of quality. I could have done with more zooms and, let's say, traditional Franco photography, but I was never offended by the camera work and, and felt like there were little additions that really worked, such as these dolls in the windows of the van, or the aforementioned gothic elements that make up for some of the less inspired moments. One not safe for work chase through the foggy woods is another example of visual opulence. There's Vaseline-wiped lenses used to add some visceral excitement to the Countess's latex visage, and the final act is filled with enough dodgy gore and haze to keep me feeling hunky-dory. Also, this shot's really cool. So is this shot. And this shot. There's a lot of great shots here. I don't know what the fuck he's going on about. Anyway, Troy Howarth mentions in his commentary that Killer Barbys isn't an essential part of Franco's filmography, and I agree, but also consider it to be a legitimately fun little film. The piss-poor effects used to get across the Countess's de-aging, the gothic throwbacks, the 16mm photography, and the oddball humor, while often too dumb for words, all works for me. I even like the Killer Barbys as a band, which I'm sure will, stop me from being invited over for tea with Mr. Thrower. Love Killer is certainly an overused song. It's used way too much, but it's a real earworm, at least for my tone-deaf headholes. Plus, Mariangela Giordano is great as the Countess, and gets the closest thing to a proper erotic sequence, despite not really having enough things to do in the film. I think she's introduced a little too late, but whatever. While Santiago Segura makes for a fun, cheeky henchman. So yeah, Killer Barbys. I personally am very fond of this oddity and the way it juxtaposes the 90s with a more vintage type of film, but for those fans of more classical Franco, it might be worth imbibing before watching this low-rent Scooby-Doo pastiche. Either which way, I wholeheartedly disagree with Thrower on this one. If you're watching the Spanish version without whatever post-production video nonsense he was saddled with, I think it's perhaps even in the upper third of Franco's filmography. That might be overselling it. Let's say top half, but fuck it. I had a good time.
Fucking idiot.
So from 1997 up until his death in 2013, Jess Franco shot his films predominantly under producer Kevin Collins' One Shot Productions banner, or his own Manacoa Films. Kevin Collins was an American fan of Jess's who was like, here, have a little bit of money. On the one hand, these are all exceptionally low budget and predominantly don't have the benefit of being shot on film, and most frustratingly often feature on-location audio, meaning that we get a far more bland and often more amateurish soundscape to work with than we're used to. There are other times where, like, Jess dubs an old lady. Not in this one, but in the one with the tarantula. Marie something in the killer, the one that's on screen right now. Anyway, that's not to say that either of these is a deal breaker, but it does make the barrier of entry much higher for those with less experience with this low, no budget world of psychotronic cinema. Anyway, Blind Target.
Trying to find a way when she's seeing through dead eyes.
It's the story of an author, Maria Beltran, whose hit book aims to take a critical look at her home country of San Hermoso, whatever. And her agent, for some fucking stupid reason, sets up a stop in the country as part of her press tour. Things immediately go awry, even with a little lesbian love action, and after quite a bit of harassment and torture, Maria winds up behind the trigger of a sniper's rifle as her enemies seek to utilize her background to aid in an assassination. That's right, it's Jess Franco doing a political thriller. Sort of.
Before we get into such a reactionary talk...
Okay, look, there's not a whole lot going for Blind Target if you're not a fan of Franco. First of all, it's just not a particularly well-written film. The dialogue is clunky at best, the cinematography is hampered by being, well, shot on video, and the thriller aspects are far from thrilling. However, there are Jess Franco fingerprints here. Not as strong as Killer Barbys, but inherent in everything from camera work to the off-kilter plot. Plus, there's a lot more zooms in this one than Killer Barbie, so, I was really enjoying that. Lena Romay as the villainous torture enthusiast Tora is worth the price of tracking down this fucking DVD by itself. Plus, where in older films you could rarely be certain, here, as well as I think every other one of these films that Jess made at this time period, we do get Lena's actual voice, which is pretty cool from an enthusiast perspective.
Your ass will be mine some other time. My 5 friends and I look forward to it.
One aspect that might lead you to watching Blind Target is the casting of Scream Queen Linnea Quigley. I hate to break it to you, but she's really barely in it. She does have a lot of fun moments in the behind-the-scenes materials, though, so for you Quigley heads, that might be worth the pickup. If I had one real major complaint about Blind Target, it's in the same vein as Stephen Thrower's in Flowers of Perversion, that our lead character is just too much of a helpless victim for most of the proceedings. Despite apparently being a top-tier assassin, she does nothing to really try and escape her captors or show any strength. There's a potentially great moment where she's being, let's say, aggressively molested. That's a marvelous opportunity to break a neck and make a run for it. Instead, she just lets it happen and cries. It feels exploitative and boring under the watch of Franco, who is often so enamored by female strength. She doesn't even get comeuppance on this guy. He's killed by a dude whose identity is, in the grand scheme, frankly kind of insulting. Also, this guy's martial arts sequences are just proof that Franco wisely stayed away from that genre throughout his career. It's not as bad as many, but especially when he's sneaking around, oh boy, it's kind of dreadful.
Hey, you bastard! Do you just rape girls, or can you fight like a man?
There's not much more for me to say here. This is, I think that my love of SOV cinema does give me a bit more patience for this kind of work, and there's enough going on to keep me interested. Like, I was entertained, but it's definitely the kind of film you would want to seek out after, I don't know, at least 30 or 40 other Franco films.
With only the slightest suspicion of our defeat from your side, you do as you're told, and I will keep my word. If you don't, I swear, I will personally prepare this present for you, with my own hands.
So yeah, looks like that's all of our presents. There's some of these have more extras than others. The Count Dracula Blu-ray actually has quite a bit, including some audio commentary, some interviews with various people. I'm really mad that Night Has 1,000 Desires does not have a commentary track. That pisses me off. That deserves a commentary track. Fucking whoever releases this next, get on it. And then Troy Howarth has a pretty solid commentary on Killer Barbys. It's pretty standard stock, and there's a lot of information in there that's just general about Jess Franco that anyone who's a fan already knows. But, it has a few little gems here and there, so it's pretty alright. And then Blind Target, this is a Sub Rosa Studios DVD. Good luck finding it for a fair price. And, Uncut Movie is one of the features. It does have behind-the-scenes footage, deleted scenes with producer's commentary. I did not watch that. Spanish language version clip with Linnea Quigley. That was boring. Stills gallery, and more. I don't know what the more means. But anyway, these are all worthwhile pickups. I am hoping that someone eventually puts out a collection of this era of Franco movies, because they're all out of print, and I want them all because I'm sad.
You son of a bitch.
Some of these movies are better than others, but they are all representative of a career defined by tenacity and an unquenchable passion that should inspire us all this holiday season. Or something.
What do you want to say to YouTube?
Now,
Go watch a movie.
we want to go have one cookie?